Audiences hate bad writing, not strong women.
She-Hulk, Peter Pan and Wendy, The Rings of Power.
I mean, yeah? Strong women. People hate strong women?
Captain Marvel, The Last Jedi, Mulan. All products featuring a female lead of significant strength or power, all brutally panned by audiences. Why is that? Sexism, right? Or maybe it's just bad character writing. That's not to discount the awfulness of any actual hatred of female characters due to their gender, but it's quite apparent once you think about it that such hateful commentary only finds any significant audience if the wider, less spiteful viewing public dislikes the character for their own, more sensible reasons.
She just smacked Luke!
The main reason, of course, is that so many lead women in film and TV in the past decade are just horribly written. There are plenty of exceptions, of course, and we'll talk about a few of those. This is a problem most notable in Disney projects, as you could tell from my list, but since Disney owns half the world at this point, it feels like a wider issue. So what exactly makes these characters such bad examples of what a protagonist should be? Well, it's hard to point to any one thing.
Well, it's hard to point to one thing. Honestly, like, if I just had to guess of why these things go the way they do, or like, I'll say the problem for me personally is like when, especially with Disney, like he said, like when it comes to Disney and their way of writing female protagonists, like their thing is just strong power. Like they just like force through the narrative like it isn't shit just because they're supposed to. Like, there's no real setup for a lot of it. It's just kind of like, here's this protagonist, and they're gonna pop and drop, and that's just how it is. Like, there'll be no real crazy flair to it. There might be quips and jokes and whatnot, but it's nothing, like, special, you know? It's just, like, it's really the most, like, watered-down versions of stuff they already did, like Iron Man or even Captain America, which isn't my favorite, but like it always just hits the same but worse. They just give them all the power but with no like real writing. Like it's weird.
In particular, not all the characters discussed here will share the same writing flaws. They all fail in varying ways, but they do have some similarities. A common one is being overpowered and not really earning that power. The original animated film shows Mulan's struggle due to her inexperience and lack of physical prowess, but she makes up for those disadvantages by using her wits, thinking creatively, and refusing to quit even when things seem hopeless.
That's what I said!
Mulan is basically a superhero already due to her midichlorians, and thus is automatically more skilled than everyone else. There's no need for her to use her brain or develop new ways to approach problems, leaving the character flat and uninteresting. It's worth noting that when I say earning power, that doesn't...
Man, for me, this movie was already ruined before I saw it. When you realize, like, in the trailer, there's no Mushu and there's no cricket. What's the point, man? Like, this is bad, but where's Mushu?
Leaving the character flat and uninteresting.
I love
Mushu.
Mushu.
Worth noting that when I say earning power,
I love
that doesn't
Mushu.
necessarily mean doing something noble or virtuous that results in the character being given great power, as is the case with someone like Captain America. Most superheroes do not.
That's what I mean. Captain America isn't even my favorite. But even I have a realization that this man, like, jumped on a grenade and was, like, viewed as the weak one. And they tried to do that with Captain Marvel, but it literally just felt like the same thing. Like, they gave her the same thing, but watered down.
Earn their abilities in such a way. Their powers are for.
Which is a goddamn shame when you think about it, because when I think about it, especially, because, like, growing up, one of the few Marvel characters I actually know is Miss Marvel or Captain Marvel. And these motherfuckers are crazy. Like, in the comic books that I actually saw, they are juiced, like, even more than they are in the movies. But they actually, like, had character.
Forced upon them through chance or freak accident.
It's such a shame.
That's fine. However, to then earn the power given them, the hero should have to struggle in some way to grow into his or her abilities. The Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie is a classic example of this. Peter Parker is given superpowers through a random spider bite, but he doesn't instantly know what to do with his newfound abilities, nor even how to put them to proper use. There are significant growing pains as he learns to be the hero he now must become. A more recent example of this trope that was done fairly well is Kate Bishop from The Hawkeye Show that at least 20 people watched. Despite being an incredibly talented archer and martial artist from the get-go, Kate is woefully inexperienced in the world of crime fighting, and has to learn how to apply her skills in each new situation, relying on the mentorship of Hawkeye himself. On the flip side, we have characters like She-Hulk and Rey Skypatine. Rey's progression through her Jedi training was basically just whatever the plot required at any given moment. Jen Walters woke up as She-Hulk and immediately was in full control of her alter ego. The central struggles that defined the characters from whom these heroines were derived are just stripped away and not replaced by anything meaningful. Jen's defining character moment takes place during...
They didn't even make her go like on a rampage for even like 2 minutes off screen or something. That's kind of weird. She literally just subdued the fucking nuclear beast on her own.
A group therapy session when she comes to the realization that she needs to accept that she doesn't...
She always seemed more human than Hulk, like in the books. But like I feel like even in the books or like the games, it was always like they led the story into it. This just seems so out of place.
Need to be...
This is only a season, and she's straight walking around. It took the Hulk like 5 years, 6 years.
She-Hulk,
holy shit!
Acceptance.
No
That's
shot.
Right. The apex of Jen's character arc is her deciding that she can be herself. This wasn't an issue, by the way, until after the She-Hulk persona was present. Prior to her accident, Jen appeared to be quite satisfied with her life. For some unknown reason, she only decided to get into the dating scene after spending some time as a giant green monster, and then found out apparently there's no market for a reasonably attractive 30-something-year-old lawyer in Los Angeles. I don't know about you.
So we got two options here. We got the Captain America, which seems like the obvious one. The American ass. That does look like an ass of America. Or it's Bucky. Bucky took the shield. It's either one of those.
30-something-year-old
Why she got that? What the
lawyer
fuck?
in Los Angeles.
Why?
I don't know about you,
Why,
but to me
man?
that feels a bit contrived. Look, I'm not in the online dating scene, but I have it on good authority that women tend to get significantly more attention than men do on those apps, especially if they happen to be successful and not ugly. Does this show seriously expect me to believe that the only guys willing to even talk to Jen Walters are total creeps and losers, or, alternatively, men who are only charming and friendly because they have an agenda? Speaking of which, let's talk about Disney's obsession with promoting and elevating women. It's one thing to have female characters who are smart, strong, persistent, and courageous. It's quite another to simply promote the power of women by setting them up on a pedestal. That kind of treatment is nothing more than pandering, and stories that contain it suffer greatly. Take, for example, the recent Peter Pan and Wendy, which decided that the all-male cast of Lost Boys wasn't...
Man, that scene in Endgame always hit kind of weird. It's like...
nothing more than pandering, and stories that can...
I felt like... I don't know. When I saw it the first time, I was like, okay. And then I went to go see this movie again. I think what really, like, made this weird for me is when you get to this part in the movie, especially when you're chilling at the movie theaters, everybody was, like, clapping and... ah! Like, as soon as any portal opened. But when this one opened, like, no one really did anything. And I never really took that in as, like, nobody seemed to really care. Like, yeah, it's cool, but, like, did any of them really do anything that crazy? Like, the Wasp helped move the thing later, but the rest of them just kind of disappeared. Valkyrie cut the thing, and yeah, that was just kind of it. And she mind-controlled, and yeah, man, it was kind of weird.
Contain it suffer greatly.
Kind of weird.
Take, for example, the recent Peter Pan and Wendy, which decided that the all-male cast of Lost Boys wasn't inclusive enough, and so tossed some girls into the mix. Girls can be rough and tumble too, you hear?
Okay.
Do you know why the Lost Boys were originally all boys?
The Lost
it's
Boys.
Because they fell out of their prams, or strollers for you Americans, and were carted off to Neverland. And girls are far too clever to do such a stupid thing. But apparently no one involved in the casting decision had ever read the original novel, so here we are. Or we could talk about Captain Marvel and the thinly veiled metaphor for the patriarchy embodied in the one dude who keeps telling her to not use her true power because that's cheating or whatever. And of course, She-Hulk seems to be mostly made just to complain about the pig-headedness of men.
There's a hot chick over there. I'm gonna go talk to it.
Yeah, nobody talks like that.
I'm gonna go talk to it. Jesus.
Just fail at
What
writing
the
good female
fuck?
characters. They're terribly written across the board.
I'm the spy. What?
It's not just Rey that the audience dislikes. No characters
Okay.
from the Disney trilogy won the hearts of the audience. Remember how great of a character Nick Fury was in Captain Marvel? Yeah, neither does anyone else. Elrond really stood out.
Wait, now hold on. I mean, he had that part with the cat that was pretty cool. Other than that, yeah, you got, I don't know, shit.
Who Nick Fury was in Captain Marvel?
I just remember this is when his eye got bopped, and then at the end of it, you see the Krugs in the car. That's all I remember.
Yeah, neither does anyone else. Elrond really stood out in the Rings of Power, right? Okay, he actually wasn't terrible. He wasn't good, but he could have been worse. Honestly, Galadriel could have been worse too. Not that I think she was well written. She wasn't. And her introduction in the first episode is basically a how-to course on annoying audiences. We first meet her as she's being tormented by other elf children for having the audacity to think that her origami swan will float. Not only does this display a severe lack of understanding of what elves are in Tolkien's Legendarium on the writer's part, it demonstrates a cheap trick that modern media likes to use in order to attempt to make the audience like a character. Forced sympathy. The mantra goes something like this.
Right.
Look, this character...
Man, that's so interesting. Movies seem to do that more and more lately. It's kind of weird. I feel like maybe it's because studio heads don't want like the risk that comes in playing a lot of the original tropes. Like, imagine if they just do the Lost Boys. Just keep the Lost Boys the Lost Boys. Just keep them as Lost Boys. Like, maybe people would have complained. And with this, or like the elfy thing, if they would just like kept it the same, like the elves keeping their traditions and not switching it up, maybe people would say some shit. But at that point, that's their problem, man. Like, especially on a level of like Lord of the Rings, when you have a world like this, like you should really try to stick to what you wrote and, you know, work with that and not try to like pry and get into the sense of some sort of emotion that people have. Like, brother, at that point, like, fuck your emotion. Like, I mean, like, just thinking about it as like a writing sense, like, you gotta just say fuck their emotion on one thing of this sense so that you can give them the other thing. Like, give them the actual elf whole, you know, mantra and you know, background and shit. And like, same thing with the Lost Boys. Like, just make the Lost Boys, you know, new, rowdier, rougher. I mean, like, you could even, like, if you want to throw a girl in there and you didn't even have to explain it or whatever, and just, I mean, you could and just keep it like, I don't know, like, it's just so weird the way they like mix into these. They like, they want to play on like a safe line of not making anybody unhappy, and on the sense of doing that, they just fuck it all up. Like, it's like you go against your own rules and intuition just to please some fucking shit you don't even understand or know how to sell. Why?
Audience like a character.
Why?
Forced sympathy. The mantra...
Just for sympathy? Brother, fuck your sympathy. Like, oh man. Like, when I think about, like, writing, I think of, like, some shit like The Departed. Or, like, I don't know, some, like, Scorsese shit. Or, like, Scream with Wes Craven. Or, I just think of, like, all of the risks and the, like, fuck you that are, like, in the script. Like, not fuck you, but it's, like, they just go with their flow, because if it doesn't, it just ruins everything. Like, there has to be the risk, there has to be that, there has to be this for it all to play out like this, and you might not like it, but it leads to all this bigger picture. Like, I hated The Departed. Like, I hated it, but I loved it. I was like, man, what the fuck? No. Leo should have lived. Fucking the whole gang should have died, but it didn't go like that. Like, it was like, this is how it's gonna go. I don't give a damn about your sympathy. I don't care what you feel about this. This is the movie. Boom, boom, boom. And it's like, shit, I can't help but, like, respect it, you know? Like, it's fucking, it's a masterpiece in its own right. Like, there's some things I would like different, but isn't there a lot of things in life you would like different? Like, shit, you can't always, you know? And the things that I didn't even like, I turned out to like them. I was like, you know, I didn't like that. But when you think about it, shit, the crime boss won. Like the McGinley or whatever family, whoever the fuck, they won. And in a sense, like as a writer, as a viewer, as a heist enjoyer, I was like, shit. Fuck yeah. I was like, fuck yeah. I was like, I didn't even think about it like that. They won. And in a sense, that's cool. Like he made a whole movie of that and didn't trade the points to gain my sympathy. Like he could have saved Leo in The Departed. Easily. But he was like, nah, fuck it. I'm gonna make it to where these people win. And I loved that. Even though I hated it. Like I hated it and I hated to love it. Like it was fucking, bro, just go with your guns. Like especially on some shit Lord of the Rings or whatever. Like just go with it.
Goes something like
go
this.
with it, man.
Look, this character is being mistreated. You must then feel bad for her and like
Fuck
her.
that.
The correct response to that is, of course, why is this character being mistreated? For all we know, Galadriel was being a complete twerp just moments before this scene, and is totally deserving of having her boat sunk. There's no narrative reason.
True, like you just build it as like they're going against all ethicals. Is like what the fuck? Like what?
That the show gives for
It's
Galadriel
wild.
to be tormented here. It's just an attempt at manipulating the audience into feeling bad for the poor, helpless victim, and thus hopefully liking her. Contrast that with our
Lame.
plate of Vin and Powder. The show opens with
Lame, yo, trying to gain like sympathy for someone to like you in a like character, like writing, that just sounds so lame. Cause even like Matt Damon in The Departed, I hated. Even Mark Wahlberg, I was like, man, what the fuck? Or man, Matt Damon again in Interstellar, you're like, man, fuck this guy. But at the end, you're like, I get it. It's like, I get it. Like, they gain the sympathy by their fucked up actions. You're like, I kind of get it. Like, he's just trying to move civilization because Plan A couldn't work on Interstellar. He's trying to hold this situation in The Departed, in the police station, because either way, he's fucked. Like, there's nothing he can do. Like, you're just like, shit. Like, that's where the sympathy should come from, man.
contrast that with Arcane.
Not just because some people are picking on them because they broke the ethics. Like you said, in a sense, you could say maybe she deserved it. What if she fucking, like, what if she pissed in the shrine of fucking holy water that they splash in their face every morning? Like, yo, like, whoa, yo.
Contrast that with Arcane and the plight of Vin and Powder. The show opens with an actually tragic scene, and it doesn't stoop to the pointed, petty tactics of Rings of Power. Galadriel lives in Valinor, a place of transcendent peace and harmony, so the writers contrived an inane attempt at sympathy. Arcane is set largely in a brutal slum of a city, but it gives its main character a plucky, relentless attitude that rejects the victimhood status which so many other modern properties confer upon their heroines. Because if you're a victim, how can anyone hate you? Well, it's pretty easy when you're incredibly smug and don't give a rat's ass about the safety of your troops.
Bro, like he said a second ago, I feel like this happens so much more. And because it's safe, I feel like it's such an easy way to garner sympathy for a character without building the movie for like 2 hours, 3 hours. Because like The Departed, that shit took forever for you to, or for me to be like, I like this guy now, even though I didn't like this guy. Like, you gotta go through the whole thing to actually get it. But with these, they just try to sell you, and that shit's annoying, because then it's like, well, that part's already gone. Now we're basically just checking off a list after that. That's like, fuck, man. Why can't we just go down the list, all of it together? You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of weird.
Me against the world vibes from Galadriel in the first episode are just so tired and overdone. We know she's going to be right about Sauron still being around because of course she is. She can take down the Ice Troll single-handedly because of course she can. However, that on its own would not necessarily be bad writing. Galadriel, because that is what the show calls her, is quite old and thus an experienced warrior. I'm willing to accept that this character has spent centuries in combat and thus is highly skilled and capable of such feats. What makes this scene so absurd is that all the other elves around her, these warriors hand-picked to exterminate Sauron and the remnants of his armies, are completely and totally hapless and helpless to the point that they might as well be a different species than their leader. It's totally fine to have protagonists who are supremely skilled, but it's a really poor choice to have the supporting characters be complete buffoons in order to showcase that skill. Galadriel might as well just be out there on her own. Really, most of the examples I've listed tend to just do things solo. It is up to them and them alone to win the day. As in Captain Marvel and Mulan, all they really need to do is seize the power that is already within them, to throw off the shackles others would impose upon them, and victory is theirs. The dramatic shift between victimhood and total power is what these movies believe to be meaningful character work, but it's really just a violent swing from one extreme to the other, and neither end of the spectrum is healthy. There's a huge difference between having agency and being world-conquering forces of nature that only needed to shrug off the hands holding them down. If you're going to write the hero of a story, a central character who ultimately is able to conquer the evil he or she faces, you need to make them earn it. That protagonist needs to struggle or even suffer as they obtain the strength necessary to win the day. Ideally, they would find such strength through meaningful relationships, or by learning from those wiser or more experienced than them. Recent examples of this done at least fairly well: Rita Vertasky, a supremely skilled soldier having to work together with Tom Cruise's character, whose name I forget, to gradually establish a plan to win the war. Vi being motivated by love for her sister, relying on others in her fight, badly missing the guidance of her father figure. Kate Bishop being mentored by Hawkeye as she realizes how ill-prepared she is for the world she has stumbled into. There are plenty of other examples of female protagonists who match that description, but I wanted to point out some from within the last decade to emphasize the point that audiences do not, by and large, just hate any strong woman on screen right now.
Oh no.
Just the ones whose character arcs are flatter than the state of Kansas. Characters who need only achieve self-actualization are not only boring and lack meaningful character work, they teach us awful lessons. The idea that all that is needed for success is to seize the strength and power already within you is a harmful notion that discredits the value of relationships, personal growth, and humility. You are sufficient, these stories tell their audiences. You don't need to change. Our heroes are supposed to inspire us, either by their ability to grow beyond their own flaws and failures, or, despite being paragons of virtue and goodness, still having to struggle against overwhelming odds and having to use their wits to be creative, to trust their team to win the day. Indeed, some of the most admirable characters in fiction, ones who do not suffer all that much personal growth due to having already attained great virtue, find themselves insufficient. This is most clear in Tolkien's work, where characters such as Faramir, Theoden, and Aragorn, great men who suffer little if any inner turmoil, at least in the books, are not able to win the day, but rather can only play their part in the war that will define the future of Middle-earth.
Man, I want to watch
this
movie.
They teach us the message we need to hear.
It's been a minute.
Message that Disney and Hollywood want to keep.
It's been a minute since I've seen this movie. What was it? Like 4 years, 5 years. I was in high school, and one day I showed up to first period. I was like, I'm just gonna watch this all day. I'm gonna watch all of them. I didn't get to finish these movies until I got home that night. It was like 9 o'clock or some shit. I forgot how long these were, but yeah, that was a fun day. I need to do that again. It was just so good.
We need to hear.
That's crazy.
The message that Disney and Hollywood want to keep from our ears.
The classic.
That is, you are not enough, but you still can do great things. They may not bring you glory. They may even bring you pain and suffering. But if you put the good of others before your own needs and wants, you will find true and lasting happiness. So many modern heroines fail to win the love of the audience because they take shortcuts to power. They are elevated by the story rather than having to climb up their own character arc. They are shallow character molds created largely to prove a point or push an agenda, and perhaps most importantly, they tend to care for themselves, their own success, their own ideas of what it means to be fulfilled. Hollywood.
Man, a good written woman character this year, brother, fucking Oppenheimer, his wife, yo, she was like a dark horse in that movie. Like, she wasn't looking for sympathy from any motherfucker. She wasn't looking for shit. She was fucking like, she knew where she was at, and she knew the mix, and she was just dealing with it like a fucking boss, yo. That lady's fucking crazy. That was one of my favorite characters. Honestly, Oppenheimer is just like a lot of them. Like, their performances were out fucking rageous, but especially the wife, like, she fucking killed it, yo.
And Disney,
which I think is the lady who he's showing in Edge of Tomorrow or whatever. She killed it.
Themselves, their own success, their own ideas of what it means to be fulfilled. Hollywood and Disney in particular seem to want so badly to provide us with examples of powerful women, but they fail to understand what makes for a
Yeah. Nah. Right, you gotta watch, like, if you want to see a powerful ass woman, fucking Kitty from Oppenheimer, yo. Just someone who isn't looking for sympathy. Even Ripley from Alien. I watched Alien last night, and I love Ripley, man. Like, the second she shows up, she's on it, yo. She's like, what are y'all doing? Y'all acting dumb as fuck. Wait, open the hatch when y'all got a fucking symbiote on your goddamn face? No! Like, and then she's like, we should kill it. We should do all the... Like, she was smart as fuck. She was fucking... Her sympathy was gained by her knowledge and, like, her plays that she made. Like, she was fucking... She was crazy. She was and she wasn't, like, looking for sympathy, yo. In these characters, like, they're writing in modern day characters, it feels like they're looking for it. Even, like, the sequels, requels of Aliens, and when they try to rewrite Ripley's and shit, they just ruin it by, like, not doing what those characters have done. You just set them up to be in the tragedy and let them learn to flourish and, you know, thrive in it. Like, that's the move. That's the drive, baby.
good example
that's the way.
or role model. The heroines they prop up are too often shallow, unlikable, and exhibit many of the traits, such as arrogance and abrasiveness, that their creators find abhorrent in male protagonists. How is this fixed? Simple. Create characters to tell a story, not to prove a point. Either show flawed characters who have to grow and change to heal their inner wounds and overcome their shortcomings, or give us paragons of virtue who have to struggle, sacrifice, and suffer due to the evil they face. But most importantly, write characters whose defining moments do not come as they realize their own worth and value, that they themselves are sufficient, but rather as they decide to take selfless action for the good of others.
I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you!
Well, those are all my rambling thoughts on the matter. I hope we see lots more characters like Vi, Kim Wexler, Rita Vertasky, and Evelyn from the Quiet Place movies.
Oh, okay.
I just realized two of those.
Oh shit, that's the same. Yeah, that's the same. That's Kitty herself, yo. Yeah, no, she's a killer, yo. She's a goddamn killer. She kills the performances she's in. She's a fucking damn.
Characters are played by Emily Blunt. No surprise there, considering her publicly stated thoughts on the strong female lead trope. Anyhow, let me know your thoughts and opinions.
Wait, what does she say? Does she thinks is whack too? It's the worst thing ever when you open a script and read the word strong female lead. That's actually what they're writing? Brother, it's not about the fucking lead. It's not about the gender of the lead. It's about the story, man. This is like why movies and television feel so weird. They're so focused on like a statement character or like whatever, and it's like you can have that by just building your world, yo. Like the things in the world that have like high notoriety for like characters were just built in the world. Like when you think of Smokey isn't the main character, but Smokey fucking steals the show in Friday. When you think of like just like there's so much shit out here, man, that's like the worlds are just making them the way they are. Like Benny in the Mummy, like he's not a main character but he bangs. Or like fucking Arbadell in the Mummy, like they all have their own stories that make them interesting, and that's all you gotta do is just give somebody a story that's actually worth a damn. Kitty in Oppenheimer's, like she was looking for no sympathy but she fucking had all the power in the goddamn world. Ripley, I mean, like there's so many ways, like just look at those characters and how they were built into the story, and that's how they came out as like mega juggernauts. Like they became the strong female lead by just being there. Like it's just so weird. They gotta realign the whole vision.
Female lead trope. Anyhow, let me know your thoughts and opinions, and
I don't know, it's just strange. They gotta do something. Shit is weird, because then you get like shit like that. You get like Mulan, you get like you get just really weird movies that just don't mean shit. Like they're just there. They're literally just there, and it's fucking weird, man. It's weird.